Out a couple real quick important points here about QE. QE has basically failed, and you know the whole reason this thing with the markets, like I pointed out in just the last video, but I just want to emphasize a couple points to try to really give it to you what's going on, because I can even maybe this might even be a good shorter term prediction too. QE really has failed because, you know, it's not just the commodities went down. I mean, that's what I'd be concerned about, but it's the equities went down, the bonds were selling off, the interest rates were spiking, and it was like, you know, everywhere. It was in Europe, the markets were tanking, Brazil, the markets are tanking, everywhere, right? So this was really a lot of it. I know there's been other factors. There's a Chinese slowdown, there's been you know, problems in the Chinese banking sector, all this type of stuff. But really what happened really recently is talk about tapering off quantitative easing from the Federal Reserve of the United States. That's really what it is. But that's telling you the policy has really failed because it has not addressed the underlying solution to problems, which is what people have been saying all along, right? They've been saying that all along. It's not really, it's just like kicking the can down the road. I mean, it's a long freaking bunch of bullshit on this, but I'm telling you though, that is telling you that QE has failed, and you know what their only option is? More QE. So, you know, them actually seeing these equities go down and the interest rates spiking, because the governments can't pay this at high interest. They're so far in debt, if the interest rates spike, it's gonna freaking take up their whole budgets. So they got to do something. It's gonna be more QE. So, you know, I'm gonna say this: it's gonna probably affect the metals. It's probably gonna affect the metals. So, you know, it's anybody's guess where the ball is gonna finally bounce at the low end. You know, you don't know. You don't know for sure. But like I said, it's kind of a thing you don't really look at every day, and it's not something that you should be speculating on every day. If you understood actually the price of any commodity on a weekly basis, I don't care if it's soybeans, coffee, or whatever, you'd be filthy rich. So, you know, that's really, most people don't understand it. They think they understand it, and actually a lot of times people do think they understand it, they wind up losing out. And even that happened with the greatest trader in the world, you know. He wrote the book and all that type of stuff. He lost out too. But anyway, I won't, because I play pretty conservative and careful. But there's another point I want to point out besides the QE. I mentioned about oil prices and tensions in the Middle East and all this type of stuff, and how oil runs with gold. There is a good correlation between oil and gold, especially when there's tensions in the Middle East. You know, it's like global tension. It could be not just even tensions in the Middle East, but global tensions. People get scared, they run to gold, you know? That brings up the price and that type of stuff. But I want to point out something like with what I said with war and oil. You know, it's not necessarily like if there's a war, there's always wars going on. I mean, yeah, that doesn't mean the oil price is going to keep. That's not exactly what I mean by affecting the price of oil. It's like when we had the Libya war, the war with Gaddafi, or whatever you want to call it, or that, well, actually it was the war with Gaddafi, basically, right? It's like, you know, gloss over it, that's what it was. Oil production was actually hammered at that time. That was bringing up the price of oil. It was going up to like, I don't know, what, 120 a barrel and stuff, and that's when silver was taking off, right? It's when there's an actual hit on one of the oil fields hard, that's when you're going to see prices of gold, silver, and oil move up. And I'll give you an example. There was one example, I think about a year ago. It was actually a rumor. See, when they were talking about closing the Straits of Hormuz, that was another good example. You know what happened in Iran? Remember when they were talking about closing the Straits of Hormuz, and, you know, everybody thought there was going to be a war pretty soon, and what was happening with oil? It was like over $100 a barrel, no problem. It was staying like 108 and all this type of stuff. And then there was a rumor that actually it was hit the news wire, that one Saudi pipeline got blown up by some rebels. One Saudi pipeline. One. That actually spiked up the oil to like 115 or 114 on the WTI. Now, I'm going to tell you this. I don't know when this stuff is going to happen with Iran, but it could have happened a bunch of times. But when it happens, and there's actual oil fields blowing up in Saudi Arabia, there's like ships being sunk in the Straits of Hormuz. It's not going to last forever. I mean, it's not going to be the end of the world. I'm not saying this. I'm not getting in all these biblical predictions and stuff. But oil is going to go ballistic. And then you're going to see gold go ballistic, and you're going to see silver go ballistic. That I know. It's not even a guess. It's not like, a war does it. If you get something happening in the Middle East where it doesn't have to be most of the supply. It only has to be 2 or 3% of the supply. It only has to be some nice drama stories where something refinery blows up, and the production of oil is affected in a global market. It's going to bring gold way to hell up because people are going to be scared, and it's going to bring oil up, and it's going to bring silver up. That's when silver is going to take off like crazy, I think there's going to be 2 more spikes. That's what I think is going to happen. So, the first spike, I'm not going to sell any till it gets, I'm going to sell a little bit when it gets over 50. Not much. But, I just want to point those 2 things out. Those are 2 things you're going to be able to count on, like the sun's going to rise tomorrow. QE is going to be the policy. It's a failed policy, but it's their only policy. It's their only policy. They already proved it. It doesn't work because the underlying problems didn't get fixed. As soon as they back off the gas, all the markets tank. I mean, they didn't even back off the gas. They just said they're thinking about doing it. And all the markets tanked. So the only thing that's holding everything up is QE. So you're going to do more of it. And number 2 is when you actually have some conflict in the Middle East where, somebody inside Saudi blows up an oil refinery or something gets struck in Iran, a couple of ships get sunk in the Straits of Hormuz, you're going to see oil and gold and then silver fly up really hard. But they're not going to stay up there forever because problems have a way of working themselves out. But that's when you're going to make out. So I just want to say you can count on that like solid, rock solid. And I don't think that's too much further down the road. One reason is wag the dog. You know what's going on with Obama right now? There's one prediction they had early in 2013. They said Obama is going to be more unpopular than George Bush, right? And that looks like that's coming about. And I mean, it's not just over economic and all this kind of stuff. It's over the NSA spying, and even like 25, a lot of people have got some brains. They're realizing there's a lot of stuff going on. When Osama bin Laden was supposedly killed last year and dumped in the ocean, all the people that did it now are pretty much dead. And you got other things going on with DHS, getting 1 billion rounds, and there's all kinds of crazy shit. This guy's getting extremely unpopular. So, what do they usually do when they're extremely unpopular? They go to war, right? That's another reason. Because Obama don't really want to get in a war with Iran, but he probably will get in. There's other people that want him to get in a war with Iran. He don't. But the way I look at it, it's almost like it's starting to become more in his interest to get in a war with Iran because, it's going to save his political butt from like a lot of things that could possibly be coming up because he might not last out his term. And that's what I'm beginning to wonder. So what you got to do is you got to divert attention away from yourself, and you got to have a bogeyman out there. So he might go along with the neocons' plan for the attack on Iran now. So that's extremely bullish for the commodities, very bullish. And when you actually have some of the oil prices, some of the oil supply actually knocked out, you're going to see gold, oil, and silver fly up. I don't know when this is going to happen exactly. I thought it was going to happen last year, but I think it's getting a lot closer, man. And especially for this reason. I don't see anybody really talking about it anymore. They used to talk about it, and now it's like pretty quiet about it. It's like, they heard this shit about the Middle East and the Straits of Hormuz so many times, they don't want to hear it anymore. You know, it's like, you know, nobody pays attention to that story anymore. Usually when things quiet down is when you got to watch. So, I know it's going to come about, though. I know that for a fact. So, that's why your money's in the right spot. That's all I have to say.